go. There's been a couple of reports this week in relation to the coronation.
Quite emotional, actually. The news broke as we were walking through Parliament Square.
Across Britain, the tension is electric. Cafes near Westminster hum with whispers, and Sunday supplements splash one idea in bold headlines. King William V will shape the monarchy of the 21st century. Today, all eyes are on Windsor. Not for mourning, but for a bold new beginning. Just days after receiving blessings at Westminster Abbey from the Archbishop of Canterbury, Princess Catherine and Prince William made their first public appearance in what insiders are calling the dawn of the dual reign. The blessing, watched closely by senior royals and state leaders, marked a decisive turning point for the monarchy. King Charles II, now under medical supervision and resting at Sandringham, has officially passed day-to-day royal duties to his son and daughter-in-law. The Archbishop's blessing was far more than ceremonial. It was a loud, clear signal of continuity, stability, and trust. Beneath the same vaulted arches where Charles was crowned 2 years earlier, the Archbishop spoke words that resonated through the kingdom. As this crown passes through hands of service, may it rest upon hearts of duty. But it was Princess Anne who delivered the moment history will remember. With grace and deliberate motion, she stepped forward to present Catherine with the newly commissioned Queen Consort's crown, created by Gerard and Company, the royal jeweller synonymous with the lineage since 1735. Adorned with Burmese rubies, sapphires and diamonds from the late Queen Elizabeth's private collection, the crown symbolised not only legitimacy, but hard-earned respect. A palace statement confirmed 2 versions of the crown: the main, heavier crown, secured in the Tower of London for major coronations and state ceremonies, and a lighter ceremonial version for symbolic events. Catherine wore the lighter crown briefly during her blessing as the Abbey bells rang across London, filling the city with a sense of reverent celebration. The princess's calm composure instantly became the talk of the nation. She wasn't just receiving a crown. One observer said she was taking on the trust of an entire nation. Hours later, the newly blessed couple arrived at Windsor Castle for their first walkabout as future king and queen. Thousands lined the route, waving flags, carrying flowers, and wearing badges reading, "For the future, William and Catherine." The air was charged with anticipation, yet remarkably tender. William led the way with a blend of duty and humility, while Catherine, dressed in a simple dove-grey coat and the smaller crown, greeted well-wishers with warmth and poise. Children handed her handwritten notes. An elderly veteran whispered, "God bless the new queen," and Catherine responded softly, "God bless the king." It was more than a walk. It was transition made visible, a shift of authority and emotion. Palace aides acknowledged the weight of the moment. "This is no regency," one said. "It's co-stewardship." Notably absent was Queen Camilla. Sources close to Clarence House suggested she chose to stay at Ray Mill House, citing the need for reflection, yet her absence did not go unnoticed. One commentator remarked, "If Westminster crowned a new spirit, Windsor revealed who truly carries it." Social media lit up immediately with hashtags, "Blessing of the Future," "Crown of Catherine," and "Anne the Anchor." Princess Anne was praised as the monarchy's moral compass. The sister who ensured duty triumphed over ego. A woman from Nottingham told reporters, "It feels like the monarchy has come full circle, from duty to devotion, from legacy to living values." Insiders described the day as meticulously planned, yet emotionally spontaneous. The couple's decision to walk without heavy security was deliberate, a message of openness and confidence. At one point, William knelt to receive a bouquet from a child and placed it at the base of the King Charles III Memorial Oak near the gates, a symbolic gesture of loyalty and continuity. Catherine watched, her expression revealing quiet strength, fully aware that every step was being recorded for history. The cameras captured a brief but powerful exchange between her and Princess Anne near the end of the walk. The 2 women clasped hands, no words exchanged, just acknowledgement. Observers noted that in this subtle moment, the monarchy's next era found its soul. Broadcast coverage from BBC, Sky and ITV echoed a common sentiment: this is not a coronation. It's a consecration. Not everyone shared the calm. Queen Camilla's allies privately questioned the speed of the transition. One courtier, speaking anonymously, said, "Her Majesty gave decades of service studying the throne, and yet, in days, history rewrites itself." Public opinion, however, remained steadfast. A recent YouGov poll found 84% of Britons supported the blessing as timely and wise. Catherine's approval ratings hit their highest point since 2022. Internationally, images of her bowing to Princess Anne during the crown presentation went viral. CNN called it the defining royal image of the decade as the sun set over Windsor's copper rooftops. The bells rang again, not for loss, but for legacy renewed. With a calm wave and silent nods, William and Catherine turned toward the castle gates, heirs ready for destiny, leaders already living it. Inside Buckingham Palace, however, the mood was far from uniform. The images of Princess Anne placing the Gerard crown on Catherine's head had circulated worldwide, yet within the royal residence they carried a weight that blurred ceremony and succession. At the heart of this quiet storm was Queen Camilla. Though the palace had announced she would step back temporarily to support the king's recovery, few expected her full absence from both the Abbey and Windsor walkabout. Aides were careful with their language, describing her retreat to Ray Mill House as private reflection. Sources close to her circle hinted the decision went deeper. It was about being written out of history in real time. Camilla watched the service from Ray Mill. One confidant said she was moved by Anne's words, but she couldn't ignore what they represented, a public acknowledgement that Catherine had become the monarchy's moral centre. In the days following the ceremony, palace protocol quietly shifted reporting lines. The communications unit, once answering jointly to Buckingham and Clarence House, now operated directly under the office of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Though described as temporary, royal observers called it a constitutional earthquake. King Charles, still under specialist care at Sandringham, reportedly approved the changes. Insiders insist it was Princess Anne who persuaded him to formalise the transition. One source revealed Anne told her brother, "You can rest, Charles. They're ready." That simple phrase, "they're ready," has since defined the new royal season. Within 48 hours of the blessing, Catherine's calendar filled. She hosted an informal luncheon for Commonwealth youth ambassadors at Kensington Palace. No crowns, no trumpets, just discussions on education and innovation. The message was crystal clear. A queen in waiting doesn't wait to lead. Public and international reaction matched the intensity of the moment. The Times called her the people's diplomat. Calm, credible, quietly unstoppable, while Middle Eastern papers praised her work on intercultural dialogue as evidence of Britain's new royal era having moral clarity. Yet inside the palace, unease lingered. Camilla's private secretary, Fiona Shelburne, resigned just days after the blessing, citing restructuring. Aides who had served both households were reassigned to Kensington. "It's like the ground is moving," one former staffer admitted. Everything that once flowed through Clarence House now flowed through Adelaide Cottage. Princess Anne, meanwhile, emerged as the unexpected architect of stability. She personally visited Charles twice that week, delivering updates and emphasising family unity, the same thought that had guided the monarchy's delicate new transition. When a reporter asked Princess Anne outside Windsor whether the changes were permanent, she answered with her trademark bluntness, "The crown doesn't wait for comfort, it waits for courage." That one line dominated headlines, unintentionally widening the contrast between Anne's fearless forthrightness and Queen Camilla's cautious silence. During the same week, Camilla's friends whispered to select journalists that she remained the king's loyal companion with no intention of fading away. Yet even her allies struggled to defend the optics. With Catherine leading state engagements and William now chairing weekly Privy Council briefings, Camilla's influence inside royal circles had visibly waned. Whispers of a dual monarchy began circulating, one of duty, with William and Catherine sharing stewardship while Charles stayed in retreat. Historians described it as unprecedented in modern times, though technically permissible under constitutional flexibility. The Archbishop of Canterbury addressed the nation in a televised reflection. "A blessing is not a coronation, but in faith, a blessing prepares hearts for what must one day come." Those words, interpreted as quiet endorsement, further cemented public belief that the throne's future had effectively shifted. Meanwhile, Catherine continued to impress with her seamless mix of discipline and empathy. She was photographed leaving Westminster Abbey for an unannounced visit to a children's hospice, and later that day, the palace confirmed she would preside over the upcoming Commonwealth Youth Forum alongside Princess Anne. Commentators drew a sharp contrast. Camilla, queen by title, unseen and unheard. Catherine, queen by spirit, present wherever it mattered. Those closest to the king insisted he felt no resentment, only pride. One longtime aide said Charles told Anne, "Let her shine. That's what your mother would have wanted." The quiet truth was clear. Power once delicate and shared was now settling into new hands. As Catherine and William prepared for their next engagement, a symbolic walk through the Sandringham gardens to meet local volunteers showcased the new order. The royal narrative had already turned a page. The age of the consort was closing. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over Sandringham as the royal motorcade arrived. Quiet applause and waves of Union Jack flags greeted the couple, marking their first public appearance since the Westminster blessing. King Charles, resting privately under medical supervision, was not expected to attend, yet his presence lingered, seen in the careful arrangement of white roses and the gentle chime of the local parish bells. This was not a farewell, but stewardship. William and Catherine stepped out together, dressed in understated navy, sending a visual message of solidarity, discipline, and shared purpose. No grand coach, no fanfare, just two figures walking the familiar path once graced by Queen Elizabeth II, acknowledging the crowd with gentle smiles. Their mission was to meet volunteers who had served quietly during the King's recent health retreat. But the gathering became more than a courtesy. It was recognition that the next generation of leadership had arrived. Catherine knelt to speak with an elderly gardener who had tended Sandringham's grounds for over 5 decades. He handed her a small bouquet of white lilies, whispering prayers for His Majesty. She smiled, touched his hand, and replied softly, "He feels your prayers every day." Nearby, William shook hands with young scouts, telling them the best service is the kind done when no one's watching. Cameras captured the sincerity in his expression, an unspoken truth. Both he and Catherine were no longer waiting to rule. They were already doing so. Inside the main hall, an intimate reception followed, attended by senior aides and Princess Anne, who had become the invisible architect of this royal realignment. Her presence was commanding yet warm, moving with the quiet authority of someone who had seen history bend and knew when to observe and when to act. At one point, Anne raised a glass, speaking briefly. "The crown is not a gift, it's a relay, and those who carry it must never run for glory, only for grace." Catherine later told reporters, "Princess Anne's blessing means more than she'll ever know. Her guidance has anchored us through change." As twilight fell over the Norfolk countryside, Catherine hosted a small round table with representatives from the Royal Foundation, the British Council, and the Commonwealth Secretariat, focusing on cultural diplomacy in a shifting world. The initiative, drafted months earlier with William, now felt prophetic. She proposed a new framework for soft power, shifting from lavish banquets and symbolic gifts toward partnerships built on education and sustainability. Shared heritage aides later confirmed her ideas would feed directly into next year's Commonwealth Youth Forum, which she and Anne will co-chair. Political observers noted her fingerprints everywhere, the same careful reasoning she had shown when declining the Saudi diamond necklace months prior. Sky News described her as the monarchy's moral compass, the queen of the modern conscience. Yet not everyone inside palace walls embraced the transformation. At Clarence House, Queen Camilla remained unseen, but not unheard. Sources said she was quietly reviewing charitable portfolios and reassigning key advisors. Some described her demeanour as icy calm, others as strategic retreat. "She feels displaced," admitted one insider. "This isn't how she imagined the twilight of her royal life. Watching another woman ascend, not through scandal or ambition, but through quiet, relentless service." Meanwhile, King Charles was briefed daily by Princess Anne, who showed him photos of the Sandringham walkabout. "They understand the people," he said. "That's what matters now." Later, the palace released a single photograph, William and Catherine walking hand in hand along the garden path, framed by blooming roses and the distant royal chapel. The caption read, "Simply continuity in grace." The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Newspapers across Europe praised the couple's poise. Le Figaro called it a new rhythm of royalty, softer, steadier, more sincere. Even US outlets ran features on the woman redefining the crown. Within Britain, The Guardian spoke of a monarchy that listens. Polls showed 86% approval of Catherine's diplomatic direction, many describing her as the rightful bridge between tradition and tomorrow. Yet beneath the grace, a quieter story unfolded, one of succession strategy and survival. Palace insiders hinted Charles's convalescence might extend indefinitely, effectively granting William and Catherine full operational authority. Official statements avoided the word regency, but privately, the reality spoke for itself. For now, family unity rested on an unspoken pact, once safeguarded by Anne, sustained by Catherine, and accepted by Charles. For Camilla, that pact meant exile in plain sight. Her title remained intact, yet her symbolic throne had already passed. As the car carrying William and Catherine departed Sandringham under the sunset glow, one BBC correspondent summed it up perfectly. The crown is no longer waiting on time. It has already found its moment in the week. Following the Sandringham visit, the palace confirmed what many already sensed. Princess Catherine and Princess Anne would co-chair the Commonwealth Youth Forum in London. The announcement came not from Clarence House or Buckingham, but from the office of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Now officially recognised as the monarchy's executive branch for public diplomacy, it was the clearest sign yet that real power had shifted. For Catherine, this was more than an appointment. It was a coronation in spirit after months of careful preparation and years of quiet work. She now stood as the defining figure of Britain's moral diplomacy, the face of a monarchy ready to earn, not demand, respect. The theme of the Commonwealth Youth Forum, Shared Purpose in a Divided World, was personally chosen by Princess Catherine. Aides revealed she had scribbled the phrase late one evening at Adelaide Cottage, handwriting it before sending it to Princess Anne for approval. Anne's reply was brief but revealing. Perfect. It's what we've needed for years. In private, the two women had become the monarchy's unshakable axis, balancing tradition with transformation. And the seasoned warrior of duty, Catherine, the modern architect of connection, their partnership is now seen inside the palace as the stabilising force that lets King Charles rest and allows William to govern behind the scenes. Preparations for the forum were intense. Catherine insisted on an agenda, blending diplomacy with conscience. Panels on women's education, youth innovation, and climate resilience replaced the traditional pomp of state dinners and ceremonial speeches. She even reached out to the Royal Institute of International Affairs, bringing scholars from Ghana, Singapore, and Canada to contribute to the discussions. She's rewriting what royal leadership looks like, remarked a senior Foreign Office official. It was no longer about ribbons and handshakes, it was about policy and purpose. Meanwhile, the visual symbol of that shift, the Gerard Queen consort crown, continued to capture global attention. The jeweller confirmed the smaller version, the crown of service, was crafted from recycled platinum and set with stones donated by Commonwealth nations. Catherine's insistence on ethical sourcing had redefined an object once reserved for opulence. Yet, while Catherine's rise was graceful, Camilla's withdrawal became impossible to disguise. The Queen Consort's team at Ray Mill confirmed she cancelled 2 domestic charity events and postponed her appearance at the Royal Osteoporosis Society annual gala. When asked whether she would attend the Commonwealth Forum, a palace spokesperson offered careful phrasing. Her Majesty continues to support the forum's objectives and sends her blessings. Inside royal circles, that subtle wording was decoded as a confirmation of absence. She knows the stage has shifted, said a long-time royal commentator. It's not spite, it's survival. Standing beside Catherine now would make her seem peripheral. In royal politics, invisibility is often the first step toward history's margins. Not everyone viewed these changes as a quiet revolution. Determined to maintain unity, Prince William privately visited his stepmother before the forum preparations began. The meeting, held at Ray Mill House, was described as civil but sombre. William reportedly told her, "You'll always have a place, but the world needs renewal." Camilla's reply was curt, almost weary. "Renewal comes for us all, William. Just remember, it never asks permission." The words, later leaked to the Daily Telegraph, were interpreted as both resignation and warning. The new power dynamic was irreversible. Catherine, by contrast, remained fully forward-looking. She commissioned a short film to open the forum, a montage of voices from across the globe narrated by youth leaders, not royals. The closing line, personally approved by Catherine, read, "Leadership is not about who stands above, but who stands beside." It instantly went viral. Social media erupted with praise for the princess's humility, and newspapers in Africa and the Caribbean called it the People's Crown moment. Even King Charles was said to be moved, Princess Anne later told aides that Charles had watched the preview and remarked softly, "She understands what I tried to begin. Only now it will endure." By the time official Commonwealth Forum invitations were sent, Catherine's influence had clearly crossed a historic threshold. International ambassadors were instructed to address her formally as Her Majesty, the Queen Consort Designate, an honorific authorised by the Privy Council until her full coronation. Royal watchers called it the quiet crowning. Yet amid the praise, one truth lingered. Every rise casts a shadow. Camilla's confidants claimed she felt increasingly isolated, excluded from strategy briefings and public correspondence. "She reads the papers every morning," said one aide. "She knows what's being written and what's not anymore." When Catherine and Anne met for the final rehearsal at Westminster Hall, they paused before the coronation chair used by Charles II. Catherine touched its wooden frame and whispered, "It still belongs to him." Anne replied without hesitation, "One day, it will belong to you. What matters is that you've earned it." The moment, captured by a nearby camera crew and broadcast worldwide, became the defining image of a monarchy reborn. One generation passing trust, not just power. As lights dimmed over Westminster, preparations continued for the grand forum ahead. The narrative was no longer about transition, it was about transformation, guided by the woman wearing the smallest crown in the room, yet carrying the greatest weight of all. The day of the Commonwealth Youth Forum dawned with soft rain over Westminster, but inside the Great Hall, a quiet sense of history shimmered through the air. This was the first international royal event chaired entirely by Princess Catherine, with Princess Anne at her side, the monarch's steadfast proxy. New trumpets, new robes, but Catherine entered in a tailored ivory suit wearing the smaller crown of service, its subtle gleam catching the light like a whisper of legacy. The symbolism was unmistakable. The monarchy reborn through grace, not grandeur. Delegates from over 40 nations filled the hall. Young innovators, cultural leaders, and faith representatives. When Catherine rose to speak, she offered no formal speech, only warmth, conviction, and quiet authority. The Commonwealth is not bound by borders, but by belief. Leadership begins in service. Applause swelled, spontaneous and heartfelt. Observers said her delivery carried the ease of someone long preparing for this moment. Even seasoned diplomats described it as a stateswoman's debut. Panels on education, women's rights, and sustainability replaced ceremonial toasts. Catherine listened more than she spoke, taking notes, asking questions, and stepping into youth discussion circles. Cameras captured her laughing softly alongside students from Nairobi and Delhi, connecting with their hopes and dreams. Princess Anne looked on with restrained pride. "She has it," Anne was overheard telling a Foreign Office official, the rarest authority, one that asks for nothing. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla made her first public appearance in weeks, a low-profile visit to a literacy charity in Wiltshire. The timing overlapped Catherine's forum, drawing inevitable comparisons. Where Catherine commanded global attention, Camilla's event passed almost unnoticed. Sources insist it was deliberate, a demonstration of quiet dignity. But she also wanted London to remember she is still Queen, one aide admitted. That evening, as the forum concluded, Catherine closed with a statement that silenced the hall. The Crown's purpose is not to rule, but to remind us that compassion is power and humility is strength. The crowd rose in a standing ovation lasting nearly 2 minutes. Reporters called it the speech of a generation. The next morning, headlines were unanimous. Queen Catherine leads the Commonwealth forward. Within hours, Kensington Palace released a photo of Catherine and Anne clasping hands beneath the Commonwealth banner, the first official portrait of what many now call the dual guardianship at Sandringham. King Charles reportedly watched the broadcast and smiled through tears. "She's not replacing anyone," he said quietly to Anne. "She's restoring what was nearly lost." And as night fell over London, one truth was undeniable. Catherine had not been crowned, but she had already begun to reign. London was cloaked in frost and soft winter light, yet amid glittering shop windows and carols echoing through Westminster, it was the quiet halls of Buckingham Palace that carried the season's most symbolic transformation. For the first time in living memory, the royal Christmas invitations were issued not from the Queen Consort's office, but from the office of the Prince and Princess of Wales. It was a seemingly small administrative shift, But whispers echoed through palace corridors. The centre of gravity has moved. King Charles remained at Sandringham under doctors' orders for continued rest. Though still sovereign, his public appearances had been drastically curtailed, signalling that the next generation was now leading, and leading with purpose. Princess Catherine, newly recognised as Queen Consort in practice, was placed in charge of organising all royal Christmas events, from the annual carol service at Westminster Abbey to the Christmas Day walk at Sandringham. Her vision was modest, yet profound. Fewer processions, more participation. The palace adorned its halls with children's handmade ornaments collected from hospitals across the UK, blending tradition with heartfelt human connection. Even Princess Anne, usually stoic, admitted, "It felt different this year, as though the spirit of duty had found a softer voice." The centrepiece of the season was the service of reflection and renewal at Westminster Abbey on December 23rd. Attended by senior royals, diplomats, and community leaders from across the Commonwealth, Catherine presided not from the throne, but from the same simple lectern used by Queen Elizabeth II. During her final Christmas address, as the choir fell silent, she spoke, "We gather not only to remember what has been, but to renew what must endure, faith, family, and the kindness that binds a nation together." Her voice rang clear and ethereal against the vaulted stone. The smaller crown of service rested on a velvet cushion beside her, gleaming under candlelight. It was not worn, but displayed, a symbol of restraint and leadership by example. The image of Catherine standing in light with the crown beside her became one of the most shared photographs of the year, and international media hailed her as the people's queen in all but name. Behind the harmony, another story quietly unfolded. Queen Camilla, now largely residing at Ray Mill House, spent Christmas privately with close friends and her son, Tom Parker Bowles. She declined the Abbey service invitation, citing health reasons, though insiders suggested it was a strategic distance, acknowledging the stage had shifted. She also knew the age of the reign is over, confided one longtime aide. At Sandringham, King Charles watched the service on television. When Catherine's image appeared, he reportedly turned to Anne and whispered, "Your mother would have approved." Anne, in her usual brevity, replied, "Then so do I." In the days that followed, subtle but decisive adjustments were made to royal protocol. The Privy Council issued a directive recognising the Princess of Wales as acting head of state for ceremonial functions, a role never before held by a non-reigning consort. Constitutional scholars debated the implications, but the public seemed united in approval. On Christmas morning, the Sandringham Walk became an emotional spectacle. Crowds braved the near-freezing air to glimpse the family. When William and Catherine emerged, flanked by George, Charlotte, and Louis, cheers erupted. Gone was the rigid distance of old royal pageantry. This was warmth, human and immediate. Catherine paused repeatedly to greet well-wishers, accepting flowers and handwritten notes. One elderly woman pressed her hand and whispered, "You already carry the crown, dear. You don't need to wear it." Later that afternoon, the couple hosted a private luncheon for volunteers, nurses, and soldiers' families, a gathering replacing the formal banquet traditionally overseen by Camilla. "This is the monarchy we prayed for," one guest said tearfully. As evening fell, King Charles delivered a brief televised message from Sandringham, short, tender, and deliberate. "I wish to express my deepest gratitude for the devotion and compassion shown by my family, particularly the Prince and Princess of Wales. In their example, we see the enduring heart of service. It was the closest thing to a public abdication the United Kingdom had seen in modern times." That night, the royal family gathered at Windsor for a small private dinner. Seated beside Catherine, William raised his glass and said softly, "To new beginnings, earned, not inherited." He rested his hand over hers. Even the king smiled faintly, content that his legacy was secure in capable hands. Snow began to fall, the first white Christmas in years, and far away at Ray Mill, Queen Camilla watched the same snowfall from her window. Those close to her said she remained calm, even serene. "She knows what's done is done," confided a friend. One friend reflected, "Her crown was borrowed from time. Catherine's was built from faith." As the bells of Westminster chimed midnight, the monarchy of Britain had quietly rewritten itself, not with ceremony or decree, but through one woman's steadfast grace. A monarchy reborn in empathy, a reign defined not by jewels, but by justice, a Christmas that crowned compassion as Britain's new tradition. And when dawn broke, headlines across every paper proclaimed what the world already knew: Catherine's era begins. If you loved this royal saga, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's hear how you feel about Britain's monarchy being quietly rewritten in real time.